Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and this is Week in Review, going over board game news, games, topics, all the videos of the week, all that usual stuff. And this, ignore this getup. This is, I got Welcome to the Moon recently, and if you're not going to go all in, why even bother? The Kickstarter version of this game came with a full honestly, it's just a coincidence. I happened to get Welcome to the Moon, but my kids decided we're going to dress up like astronauts for the Jewish holiday of Purim, which effectively and easily translated is the Jewish version of Halloween. There's overlap. There's a lot of general overlap in costumes and candy and all those usual stuff, but yeah, I'm an astronaut, and after this video's done, I'm going to go have fun for the rest of the day. I mean, this video's also fun, but I'm going to have more fun for the rest of the day. But before we dive into the rest of the video, this video is sponsored by Geek & Son. This particular video, it's sponsored by Geek & Son, who currently have an Archie gaming table, or the Archie gaming table, over on Kickstarter. I talked about this already last week if you want to check that out, or I have a full video if you want to check that out. But effectively, they have a modular gaming table, lots of inserts, lots of adjustability, lots of different sizing options, lots of different ways you can customize the cost, the add-ons, the whatever it is you want, from wide insets to thin insets, the armrests, whatnot, to the various bins you can move around and the tops for those bins, a whole ton of customization. Probably have a video overlaying me as I speak that you can see some of those fun little options, and they are continuously adding freebies through stretch goals. So if you want to check that out, they're going to be they already added some boxes, they have some pro sets coming up, they have some acrylic side trays, they've added an inset, they have a whole bunch of things slowly being added through stretch goals. The more everyone backs, the more you will actually get your copy with extra freebies instead of having to pay for those things. And with that, let's go ahead and go into the giveaway winner, because there was a giveaway last week for Everdell Puzzles. So talking about the winner there, the winner over there, it's now the same thingies from usual, which is you have a week to claim your prize. If you don't, it's going to be given away to a Patreon member instead. But effectively, I gave away a bunch of Everdell Puzzles last week. The keyword was Everdell, and Adam Lamb is the winner. Adam Lamb, A-D-A-M, Lamb, L-A-M. You have won Everdell Puzzles. Please contact me at alex@boardgameco.com so I can give away your prize. Or alternatively, in a week and a half, it'll go to a Patreon member instead. Anyways, that is that. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We'll talk about the games on the table at the end of the video as always, and timestamps to every single thing down below. But starting off with basic board game news, starting with Resurgence. Resurgence is, well, let's give it the real reason. So Resurgence, there's a company whose name I can't remember, Meeple something, I think, I don't remember. I mean, statistically speaking, it's Meeple something. But there's a company that does a bunch of board game gear, shirts, all those things, and they partnered with Stan Kadonsky from Resurgence to do a shirt that has blue, it has yellow, it has some of the artwork from Resurgence, and all proceeds are going towards a good cause. I don't remember the name of the good cause, but to a good cause. I'll link to that down below in case you want to buy that. Shirt looks great in case you like the art, and it goes to a good cause in case you like that. So I'll link to that down below. And then once we're talking about Resurgence late pledge option is closing on March 27th. So this is really, your last week or so to try to get your hands on it if you want a copy. I highly recommend the game. I think it is excellent. Unrelated to the Ukraine part, but just, because we're talking about Resurgence. From there, GTS. GTS is one of, 6 large distributors in the, I think 6, could be more, but 6 that I know of, larger distributors of board games out there. GTS stands for, I should probably know what it stands for. I don't know what it stands for. Something, something, something. That's what it stands for. But GTS, they are going exclusive with Stonemaier, meaning, more specifically, Stonemaier is going exclusive with GTS. If you want to buy Stonemaier products, Stonemaier Games products, you have to get them through GTS. This matters to you not at all unless you buy board games, for a living. So, if you just buy board games, it won't affect your thing. It might affect you in a small way, the truth is, because on the off chance you buy your stuff from a local gaming store that doesn't have a distributor relationship with GTS, then you might not be able to get Stonemaier games through them. That is not that common. I mean, if you have a game store, you can have a relationship with GTS for the most part. I mean, most people would, but in theory, you may not have access to them. In theory, so it might actually trickle downhill and slowly have an effect on you. Past that, speaking of distributor news that likely doesn't affect you that much, Flat River Group. Flat River Group acquired Luma Imports and Synapses Games. It's a little Asmodee type buy-in thing, except it's not Asmodee. To the best of my knowledge, it has nothing to do with Asmodee, just, a company buying another company of games. Synapses has, we talked about them last week with Beta, they have Quadro, and Luma Imports has a whole bunch of titles under their belt, of which every single last one will escape my memory at the moment because right now I'm talking about them. But Luma Imports has a ton of games, many of which I own, and I don't remember a single title in this current instance in time. Lastly, talking about news adjacent. Jesse Quacklope did a video last week responding to a whole thread, of which I was mentioned in the thread too, thank you very much. But effectively, the reason I want to call it out is specifically there's a part in the video that I wish I could just save in some way and just show it to every person who had this complaint. But roughly from the 2 minutes and 5 second timestamp, roughly, I'll link to that with timestamp down below. But roughly 2 hours and 5 minutes, sorry, not seconds, 2 hours and 5 minutes in, till roughly 2 hours and 15 minutes in, so around 10 minutes or so. There's a particular response, because the thread in nature was, while mixed in terms of support and criticalness, there was a degree of criticalness in there. And one of the conversations that constantly comes up in the space is, conflicts of interest and bias. And so there was a question in there like, what do you want from a content creator? And one particular person said, I want you to have no biases, no conflicts of interest. I want you to play the games, multiple times with multiple sets of people at multiple player counts. I want you to heavily edit your videos so that there's no pauses or any way so that you don't waste my time. Like, there's a whole list of demands of like what that person wants from a content creator. I just thought Jesse's response was on point because, listen, we'll talk about a bit more of the topic of the week to an extent shortly, like in the same video, but I sometimes think people don't understand what reality is. And listen, if you're getting what you want from someone, then by all means, you should continue to seek that out. If you are getting everything you want from somebody, seek it out. And to some extent you can. I mean, if you have audience-supported people who, I don't think they don't have a conflict. Something I've talked about in the past is the nature of any relationship is there's a conflict. Because if you're audience-supported, the audience, for some reason, craves negativity. If I was willing to trash more games, I guarantee you I'd have more subscribers and more views. I guarantee it. But I'm not willing to just make up opinions for the sake of anyone, whether the publisher or the audience. And so there's always a conflict, there's always a bias, but really in order to have no bias, you'd have to not take any money from YouTube at all, I imagine. Like, none. You'd have to, like, give up all your YouTube ad revenue, you'd have to not have a Patreon if you really want to have no bias. But either way, some people have requests, and if they're getting their requests met, and if they're happy, I'm happy they're happy. Also, I think some people are unrealistic. Anyways, but it's worth watching that segment. But moving on from there to game news, of which we have a whole lot, partially because the first 5 I forgot from last week. I just went through my video and completely forgot to have it on my list, which is the Game Found Feast. I included a link last week, but just in case you missed it, the Game Found Feast is basically Game Found's little news segment of like 5 things coming to Game Found in the near future, of which we have Sleeping God's Distant Skies being likely the biggest of those 5. Then we have Andromeda's Edge, which is a spiritual successor to Dwellings of Eldervale. Not really a successor, but has some mechanical similarities, as well as being from the same designer, coming to you from, not from Breaking Games this time, but coming to you from, I'm blanking on their name, Cardboard Alchemy, the same people who brought you Mission Catastrophe and the Dragon game, who I really am just blanking on all the names all over the place today. But anyways, the Flamecraft, that's the one. Just names are escaping me. But anyways, we have Andromeda's Edge. We have Thorgim from Portal Games, which I actually did mention in a prior video when I first found out about that one a few weeks back. We have something coming from Cyanide and Happiness, which is unspecified title, but they brought you their first game, which again, I don't remember the name, and then they brought you after that the Trial About Trolley. And then lastly, Oak, which has already launched on GameFound, so by the time you're watching this, you can already back that game. So that's the Game Found Feast news. Then from there we had an expansion for Parks is going to be coming soon, another expansion in addition to Nightfall, so I don't know if it's coming on Kickstarter or retail, but there is an expansion coming for Parks. We have Caverna Cave vs. Cave has a big box coming, a big box that has the base game and the expansion. That's really it. We have Trekking the World Trivia, another kind of game in the Trekking the World universe, so not exactly a game. I mean, it's a game, obviously, but not necessarily, I don't know. Honestly, I just don't know where it lies. We often see, in fact, Parks also have this like kind of a memory side game that was Parks, but with memory stuff, so we do see things like this. We have Red Window from Funko Games. Rear Window, not Red Window. We have Rear Window from Funko Games. Funko Games and the Prospero Hall design team constantly bringing more games with IPs together, and we have Rear Window is one of their latest ones, along with the Killers, I think it's called. Then we have Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is coming out with a stripped-down version of their game. I don't know if it's stripped down in terms of content or just standees instead of miniatures. I know they have standees instead of miniatures. I just don't know what other changes they've made to the game. But Assassin's Creed is a great game, continuing the V Commandos, V Sabotage line of games, but with enough differences that is totally different while having similarities. I highly recommend Assassin's Creed, and I'm happy they're coming out with the retail edition because the current edition that they had on Kickstarter is incredibly expensive and hard to get your hands on, and just it's a lot. And so while I recommend the game, not a lot of people would or should get their hands in it at the price point. So I'm happy to come up with the retail edition of the game because standees are fine, and you'll be able to play and enjoy the game very well with a bunch of standees anyways. I mean, it depends how bothered you are by it, but it's a great game. And the original V Sabotage V Commandos came out with just tokens instead of whatever, so it's definitely doable in that sense to enjoy these games. We have Turing Machine from Scorpion Mask. Scorpion Mask makes a whole bunch of other games. They've come up with a bunch of stuff. They've actually partnered with other companies as well. I believe they were acquired by Hachette Games, if I'm not mistaken, but they're coming out with Turing Machine. And we have G.I. Joe Mission Critical from Renegade, which I believe, I'm not certain of, but I believe is effectively a re-themed, reskinned version of the Power Range Heroes of the Grid game, just with a G.I. Joe theme. Now, are there differences? I don't know, haven't looked into it heavily, but I believe it's using that same system, if not mistaken. We have Star Wars Villainous coming from the OP, I believe, from the OP. Star Wars Villainous is the newest version of, well, Villainous. We had the original Villainous, we had Marvel Villainous, and now we have Star Wars Villainous coming out as well. We have Smash Up Disney, speaking of, IPs on games, we have Smash Up Disney coming to you from AEG. Then we have Into the Blue from Rainer Knizia. Into the Blue is going to be one of his newer designs coming out. There's a review from Eric Martin, I believe, over on Board Game Geek. You can check that out. I'll link probably to that article so you have access to all of that. Then we have Crusaders Thy Will Be Done. Another Renegade announcement. The Crusaders, which was previously under the TMG umbrella, was a game that, well, folded along with TMG, and they actually had an expansion in the works at the time. The expansion never saw the light of day, but Renegade has picked up the line of Crusaders, and they are going to be publishing that along with Crusaders Thy Will Be Done. I do not know if it's retail or Kickstarter. I assume retail. Renegade mostly does retail stuff, but they occasionally dabble on Kickstarter, but we shall see. We have Methodology with an Agatha Christie social deduction game. We have Castles mini expansion, which I should have probably mentioned this. This is the Dwellings of Eldervale, basically. Dwellings of Eldervale, I should have mentioned this along with Andromeda's Edge. Different companies, but still. But Dwellings of Eldervale has a little Castles mini expansion. I'm not even sure if you need to buy anything or if it's more print and play. I'll link to the BGG article or thing about the game so you can check that out if you're interested. And then lastly, we have a Maglev Metro insert. Just basically this guy who I see online on Facebook groups. His name's Oscar Valera. Apparently designs inserts, and apparently Bezier Games reached out to him to make his insert the official Maglev Metro insert. I haven't used the insert. I don't know anything about it, past the fact that from a picture stance, it looks like it's very, very efficient. Although I can't speak for how it integrates with any of the expansions, so maybe buy the expansions and decide how that works together, and we'll see from there. But anyways, that is all the game news, which brings us to the topic of the week. Topic of the week is related to that whole Jesse thing, although it's kind of inspired by a follow-up post, which basically, the topic of the week is I love what I do. Like, I love what I do so much you have no idea. And I think you have to. I think that's part of the conversation. And it's kind of based on the thread Jesse was responding to, in the sense that somebody else, which I'll link down below, posted a follow-up thread about the nature of making it full-time as a content creator. And who does it? How can you do it? What do you have to do? And I thought there were a lot of interesting comments in that thread, which were on point. And part of it is the fact that you have to love what you do, and you have to love the way the system incentivizes what you do. Or be a magical exception like shut up and sit down. That's also possible. What I mean by that is, to a large extent, and this was referenced, and this is always referenced, it's always referenced and it's always a thing, which is the idea that people frequently are upset that content creators are always covering the newest thing, and they're always cycling the new stuff, and they're always inherently selling you on the new. They might not be their intent, it might not be their goal, they're trying to give you information on the new, but, if you, let's pick a new game here, let's pick Welcome to the Moon. If you have heard about Welcome to the Moon and are looking for a review, that's awesome. Being able to find content around that is very useful. But that's not necessarily how content works. In fact, for the most part, that's not. For the most part, what happens is you find a content creator you like, and then the YouTube algorithm, either because you subscribed or because the algorithm knows you, will keep recommending videos from that content creator. So you may have never heard of Welcome to the Moon, and now you're hearing about it because I just did a video on it. That's often what happens just as much. Sometimes you hear about it and you're looking for a review. Other times you're seeing their videos first. And again, just statistics side, from the back end of YouTube, I can tell you, most videos are watched because the algorithm suggested it or because you're a subscriber. Far fewer videos are watched because people are searching for specific terms. Okay, that's just the way, and obviously it'll be dependent on whatever industry you're in, but at least myself, that's how it works. And so content creators are always covering the latest thing, and they're always selling you on the latest hotness. And that can be frustrating, and people frequently complain about it. The problem is when people sit there and say, well, we'd rather have older videos or older content or fewer videos. Well, the algorithm doesn't reward that, and people don't watch that. If I sit there and I cover a review from a game from 2 years ago, it gets fewer views. I'm not even saying old, I'm just saying 2 years ago or a year ago. It gets fewer views. The nature of time and attention is that people will watch the newest stuff when it's new. There is an urge to get the new thing out because that's when people want the information. When a year goes by, when 5 years goes by, when 10 years go by, watching older content far more often has less of a sticking point. And so to a large extent, the system and the ecosphere that I'm a part of rewards constantly playing and covering newer games. It rewards it from a stance of just that's what people want, and so that's what I'll do. I play a lot more newer games than I ever used to before I did content. I used to try to have a little bit of a filter, and I talked about it in one of the videos in this week. We'll talk about this. I used to have a little bit of a filter around not playing the newest hotness and all that stuff because I didn't want to play a bunch of games that were going to last in the ecosystem for 6 months and then no one would ever care about again. Now I do that all the time. Now I play stuff that you've never heard of, you'll never touch, and by the time 6 months go by, you'll never hear of it again. Now, I do find a lot of gems in those games. Absolutely that happens. But I also play a lot of games that are just good, and they're okay. And listen, whenever I rate a game a 3, it means that I don't need to play that game ever again. When I rate a game a 3.5, it means that there are enough aspects of that game that I enjoyed, but there are other better games. 3.5s are often in that weird category where there's parts of it that I like, and I kind of wish I had more time so I could play them, but I'd rather play better games. 4 and up is where it's at. 4 and up is where the real joy and the real excitement starts coming into play, where it's not just, oh, I'll miss that one part of that game. It's I love those games. And most of my reviews probably fall into the 3.5 or the 3 category. I would say 3.5 is probably the most common. I'd have to check my most recent stats. But 3.5, that aspect of I like you and there's something about you, but also I'd rather play something else, that is a very, very common rating for me. And 3s are again, solid games, just I don't need to play them again. And then once you get to 2.5 and lower, it starts moving into the less enjoyable camp, where I feel like my time is partially wasted. But I play and review a lot of games in those categories. I do it because the system incentivizes it. I do it because the system incentivizes it. That's really the main reason I do it. If I could grow this channel at the same pace and only play the games I love, well, obviously I would do that. Why wouldn't I want to? But I can't. There's a trade-off to being in this space. It's a trade-off that I still love. It's a trade-off that has a ton of fun behind it. Part of the trade-off is some of the newer stuff that I love, I get to play in a way that I never did before. Primal, Endless Winter, Mythic Mischief, pick whatever amazing games. Encyclopedia, currently. There are so many amazing game experiences I get to try and get my hands on and see them in ways that I might never have done. I find gems that I wouldn't have touched. I don't know if I would have ever gotten, maybe I would have. Mine MGM2 got enough reviews that I probably would have gotten my hands on it. But yeah, there's a lot of amazing things out there, and I get to experience the space in a way that I really love. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because a particular comment that stuck out from me from that follow-up thread is the idea that content creators kind of have to be the type of personality that rotate new games, that play a lot of new stuff, that constantly are doing that. And you either have to fall in hate with the hobby because you're doing that, or you have to already be the type of personality that does that. I already was the type of personality that did that. I always played new games. I always sought out the newest games. One of my favorite videos that I've ever done on the channel, and I'll link to it down below, is a video of the search for the perfect game. And it's why I do what I do. Well, it's also partially changed. Now I do it because the algorithm incentivizes it as well. So I do it more than I used to. But I always did it. I always kept getting new games. I just usually had a bit more of a gap period, and while I waited for the general audience, or the people, the reviewers, to vet those games as being more worthy of paying attention to. But I always sought out newer games. I always cycled games. I always played hundreds of new games every single year. That number's just gone up from hundreds to 200s of new games every single year. I enjoy myself so much in this space, and there are so many different aspects of what I do, which is ironic because one of the videos I did this past week is 5 things I don't like about content creation and 5 ways content creation has made the hobby worse for me. But I tried saying this very clearly in the video, so hopefully it comes across. But I love content creation. I love what it has done for the hobby for me. There just happens to be some negative side effects. There happen to be trade-offs. That's the way life works. It's full of trade-offs. You have kids, but that also means that, and the bundles of joy, make no mistake, kids are bundles of joy and they're amazing. But it does mean that you can't just randomly leave the house at any moment without worrying about the impact of the little beings under your supervision. There's a great comedian, it's worth watching. People without kids don't even know. It's got an amazing bit from Michael McIntyre. Absolutely amazing for anyone who's a parent. Amazing for people who aren't parents too, but incredible. You get a job and you get a paycheck, but that does mean you have responsibilities, you have to go to work. I became a content creator and got a million perks along the way, but there is definitely a trade-off too. I have to edit videos. It's currently my holiday right now. Not the kind of holiday where I have to be offline or I wouldn't be filming this video, but it's perm, and I'm about to spend the rest of the day with my family and kids and just having fun and doing all those things, and I'm here doing a video. I enjoy the video, but like the timing of it, the balance of having to fit these things into a schedule. If I go out of town, I have to prep in advance, I have to edit, I have to thumbnail, I have to do all these things, I have to be mentally mindful of all this stuff. There's always trade-offs to everything in life. But I love what I do, to no end. If I was trying to pick one of the best returns with one of the lowest trade-offs, it would be this. And coffee, obviously, because coffee is just, it's just an addiction, and you have to make it and all that, but coffee is delicious. But this hobby in general, the hobby in general has a trade-off of cost. You have to buy things. If you love the hobby, you suddenly find yourself overwhelmed with things you want to buy and decision points that you didn't have to make before. If you get married, hopefully you find yourself in love with somebody and spend the rest of your life with somebody who's a tremendous part of your life. But there's trade-offs along the way. There's compromises. There's things that you want a certain way, and you have to suddenly figure out how to live with another person. I've been married for 11 years, and I couldn't be happier. But that doesn't mean that along the way I didn't make trade-offs. I didn't sit there and say, oh, you prefer things this way, I prefer things that way. But one of us is going to have to cave, and you make those compromises. Everything in life is full of trade-offs. Everything from the coffee in my hands, to the person I married, to the kids I have, to the jobs I've had, and to doing content. But I absolutely love what I do. I will have a follow-up video on aspects of how content creation has made my life significantly better. Keep in mind, my game plan, my absolute game plan, is to sit here and take a pay cut to do this. I have no ambitions whatsoever that I will be able to do content and make as much money as I make at my day job. I will not. I'll tell you that right now. The only question is, can I afford to live? And that's something I'll work on, and we'll make that work. But I will absolutely be making the trade-off of taking less money to do something I love, despite some people on the internet. This is not charging. Oh boy. I just realized my coffee is getting a little warm, which means it's not charging, which means it's not plugged in. I'll have to fix that. Anyways, let's move from there into what I played. And as far as what I played, what do we have here? We have the following. Let me pull up my app. A bunch of things I have not yet logged because I was away this weekend, and we got to take care of that. Okay, so what do we have? Actually, it looks like I did log them. I think I did log them. Okay, from last week, I played Floriferous. I think I talked about some of these games. I'll skip Wednesdays because I don't remember when I filmed last week's. No, let's just go ahead and go through it. So, I played So Clover, got a bunch of plays of So Clover in, which I've been talking about recently. I played Sleeping Gods again. I've been continuously playing through Sleeping Gods, which is under this table over here. We have Leviathan Wilds. It's a prototype that I got a chance to play online, one of wandering around trying to basically rescue a monster by killing various crystals on them and stuff. Fun little puzzle of a game. I need to play it more because I need to play at higher difficulty levels, but I enjoyed it so far. We have Floriferous. Floriferous from Pencil First Games. I've been playing a few games of that, and we got in a film playthrough of that. We have Project L. I pulled up Project L to play the new version with the Finesse expansion. We'll be talking about that more some point this next week, I think. Micro Dojo. I got to play in Micro Dojo the Loyalty and Heist expansion. I think I talked about this already last week, so it's got several plays in Micro Dojo. The Loyalty, I think it's called Loyalty and Deceit, not Heist. Loyalty and Deceit expansion. I already covered that on the channel. We have more plays of Project L with Finesse. We have Age of Rome, which we'll be talking about a little bit later at the end of this video. We have Tranquility. I got another play of Tranquility, which is always fun. Panorama is a fun game that's not really from the people who do Everdell. It's not from Starling, but it's sort of from Starling. But we have Panorama. I'll be talking about that again coming up this week. Continuous plays of So Clover. It's becoming one of my most played recent games. We have 2 plays of Great Plains. Great Plains is a fun game that Jesse from Cracklope actually gifted me because he played it with Shira, and he kind of liked it. She didn't love it. I played it with them, really enjoyed it, but I got 2 more plays in with somebody else in my game group. Really solid game and enjoying it a lot. Founders of Teotihuacan. I got in a few plays of that. We'll be talking about that more probably this week. We'll see. Watergate. I got in a play of Watergate with deluxe bits. First time I played with the deluxe bits I got. I don't know if I've showed them in one of my deluxification videos. If not, I'll be sure to. But Watergate's a great game, and the deluxe bits certainly do not hurt. Viticulture. I got in a play of Viticulture Essential Edition. I have to do a review of that one. We'll be talking about that more sometime soon, I guess. But Viticulture is a game that I've continuously loved. I've been pushing off the review for like 6 months. I really have to do that. We have Subastral. Subastral from Renegade Games, gotten a few plays of that. It'll likely be showing up in its own video, so we'll talk about that there. We have Taco Cat spelled backwards. That's part of the Exploding Kittens line of games that I've already talked about in the past, but Ricky asked to play it again, so we continue to play it. We have Micro Macro Crime City Full House. It's basically Micro Macro, but it's the expansion for Micro Macro, standalone expansion. If you like Micro Macro, you'll like Full House, and vice versa. I don't know if I'd recommend one over the other. They're both fun games doing the same thing. We have Stella Dixit Universe, continuously playing that one as well. We have Furnace from Arcane, from Arcane Wonders? No. Am I messing up the name? I think from Arcane Wonders. Either way, Furnace, great game, already reviewed it on the channel, but gotten a play of it, really enjoyed it still. Gotten a play of That Time You Killed Me from Pandasaurus Games. Base game only, there's a bunch of modular expansion stuff. The base game has me intrigued, but I think the expansions will determine whether it's a game that sticks around or not, because the base game was, hey, this is interesting, but I like other games better. But I've heard that the modules that you add in really mix it up, so we'll play those, probably review it at some point. We have a play of Luna, Stefan Feld. Gotten a play of Luna, actually with Amy and Maggie from Thinker Themer. Basically, I was at Gamma this past week, and I'll have a video on that at some point, but I got to hang out with a lot of people that I've never hung out with properly in the past, or some that I have hung out with properly in the past as well. It's a lot of fun, but played Luna from Stefan Feld. Good game. I don't know if I love it yet. I think that I enjoyed Luna while feeling that I'd rather play other Stefan Feld games, at least so far. We have Raja the Ganja's Dice Charmers. Played that as well with a bunch of people. Turns out that's a game that plays better at lower player counts. At higher player counts, it drags a little longer than I think is ideal. I got in play of Decrypto, which is always fun. Once you have higher player counts, you may as well play Decrypto. And I got in like 6 plays of French Toast. French Toast is a good game at higher player counts. It's from Peter Hayward, actually the designer of That Time You Killed Me. And those two are unrelated. I played French Toast with Peter Hayward, the designer of That Time You Killed Me, and the designer of French Toast. But I played That Time You Killed Me the day before, then I ran into the designer the next day and played with him. The fun parts of going to conventions. Then got a play of So Clover again, same group, just a lot of people hanging out at the Glass Die. The Glass Die is a gaming bar in Reno, Nevada. Got in a play of that, of all these things over there, or many of these things over there. And that's mostly what I played. It's possible I'm forgetting things. I haven't fully logged everything, but I think that's mostly everything. Which brings us to the Week in Review. Week in Review, all the videos of the week, starting off with Saturday, Factory Funner. Factory Funner from Board Game Tables. I gave it a 3.5. I don't know if it stays or not. That one falls in the category of a 3.5. I already talked about this in this video. 3.5s are in that range where I'm sad if I don't play you, but also there's better games for me. I'm mixed on Factory Funner. I like parts of it a lot. I don't know whether it stays or goes. I don't know. Well, time will tell. We'll see. We have Tamashii Chronicles of Ascend from Awakened Realms Light. Review that as well. I didn't rate this in the video. I called it a first impressions. But to answer what somebody messaged me directly and asked me, he's like, well, what would you rate it? It's between a 3.5 and a 4. At least right now, based on where it is. I'm not willing to rate it either direction because I think it'll end up as a 4. I think. I just have to play it properly. Because my first game that I played was, the introductory mission would have been a 3, not even a 3.5. As I dove into it more, it definitely rose to a 3.5, but I think it rises to a 4, but I really have to play the final game. If I had to guess where the rating will be a year and a half from now, whenever I finally get it and review it, I'm guessing it'll be a 4. There's a chance it goes higher, but I think that's unlikely, and there's a chance it goes to a 3.5 as well. I think it's more likely that it'll end up as a 3.5 than a 4.5, but again, I'm just guessing based on not having a finished experience. This is a bit of a problem of, we'll talk about this happen. This is relevant to Tidal Blades as well, so let's talk about this in a second. But effectively, that's Tamashii from Awakened Realms Light, and currently on GameFound. Then on Sunday, I did a very fun video from myself, is Kickstarter ruining board games. It's basically a multiple choice adventure to an extent where I talk about the reasons why you might say it is ruining games and the reasons why you might say it is not ruining games. But I really enjoyed the video. I was hoping it would do well. It was a bit of an experiment. It's also an experiment because of the way the algorithm punishes you for being different. And for me, my main video of the day was a 52-second video followed by a choose your own adventure arc. So I wasn't sure what the algorithm would do to it. Turns out the algorithm was fine with it, or people watched it enough that the algorithm was like, hey, this is still working. Whatever it is, the point is, while it was more work, it was actually a lot more fun than a usual video. So I plan on doing things like that again. I do recommend watching it if you haven't. It's a little choose your own adventure experience. I'm happy with it, and enough people were as well that I'll be doing this type of thing more often. Anyways. Not that much more often, it's a lot more work. Anyways, that is Sunday. On Monday was To Back or Not To Back. No major highlights for me. Tiwanaku, which I've constantly been saying Tiwanaku, but Tiwanaku, previously known as Pachamama, is one of the games that's a highlight for me because I like it a lot, and Modicity as well. But past that, a bunch of games on there, just some were less interesting to me, so I'm just picking out the highlights for me personally. On Tuesday, we had a bunch of reviews. We had Tidal Blades, which, going back to the conversation around Tamashii, Tidal Blades I gave a 4 to 5, with the instinct that I think there's a 90% chance that it'll be a 4.5 or higher, but this is the same trouble I got in when I rated the Lords of Ragnarok from Awakened Realms, where I kind of half rated it based on where it was, and half rated it based on, obviously, some of these things are not going to be issues in the final copy. And people were understandably upset about that. Like, how could you talk about these issues? And it's the weird balance of rating something that's in progress. Tidal Blades, for context, is a game that I really enjoyed, but the difficulty I needed to be a little higher, because it wasn't enough of a challenge. And that almost certainly will be solved based on talking to them, and it should be an easy solve. And instinctively, I want to say it's a 4.5 because I really enjoyed myself. And I'm 99% certain that that problem will not be a problem. But it's a weird balance. How do you deal with that? Do you rate something as it is when you know it's a work in progress? Do you not rate it at all? Those are all conversations, and I know people have different opinions of it. I've actually asked about in the past whether I should or shouldn't rate prototypes, and while their answers were mixed, the majority still wants a rating, because the majority is still making a a personal decision around whether to buy it or not based on what the game is and what it might be. So it's always a balance. It's always a struggle. In the case of Tidal Blades, the reason I rated Tidal Blades and not Tamashii is because Tamashii I had only 2 scenarios that weren't like the complete tutorial, and there wasn't enough content. So Tamashii I wasn't confident rating at all. Tidal Blades did give me 6 scenarios. I just need that rating in place. I need the difficulty modified. But I'm 90% certain that Tidal Blades will be a 4.5 for me. I just can't say that technically until it's actually done. Later on Tuesday, we had Micro Dojo Loyalty and Deceit. It's a good game. It's an expansion to a good game. It's not a game that's for me. I'm not the target audience for the game. I would want it to be bigger and more accessible, and not accessible in terms of price point or table size. Those just aren't my priorities. I think it's a solid game for people who are mindful of price point and table size, because you get a lot of game and a very small table size for what you're getting there. Then lastly on Tuesday, we had a review for Encyclopedia. This one I did give a 5 out of 5. And yes, it is a prototype. I don't care because I loved Encyclopedia. My biggest concern with Encyclopedia is that over time that it gets samey, but it's a game that I've played at least 6 times by now, maybe 7 times. I don't know, I have to check my app if I remembered all the plays, but it's a game that I've continuously played, and I've played it after covering it as well, which is always a good sign. In fact, I ran into Devin at Gamma, and he's like, how many times have you played Encyclopedia since? And I'm like, I think I played it like 2 or 3 times since reviewing it. And so he's like, oh wow, you really like the game. Yes, I do. Encyclopedia is excellent. I'm really looking forward to the campaign launching this week. Then we have Wednesday. Wednesday was the worst 10 rulebooks I've read, or the worst 10 rules experiences. They're not actually, strictly speaking, the worst, because I'd have to like think through every game I've ever played, and I'm sure I could find worse ones. But they are ones that are either in my collection, so they're front and center, or they're particularly bad experiences that stuck out at me. So they're 10. Think of it as 10 really bad rulebooks that I've experienced, as opposed to the 10 worst rulebooks I've experienced. This goes back to the YouTube algorithm and the nature of things. Accurate titles often aren't as ideal. Like, for instance, if I really wanted to be accurate with my content creator video, which we'll cover in a second, I wouldn't call it 5 things that are worse as a content creator. I'd say, I really, really love content creation, and I'm really happy with how it's, changed my life for the better, but here are 5 aspects of my life that have gotten slightly worse because of it. It's not a good title. And there is a balance. There is a balance between, like, I'm not going to say 10 less ideal rules experiences for a title of video. Is it more accurate? Yes. Yes, it is. There is a compromise to be made. Hopefully I'm balancing that compromise of accurate titles to content engagement well enough. Hopefully I am. But yeah, ultimately audience feedback is always going to be the biggest thing. If I have one person upset, I never care. If I have a whole bunch of people upset, I modulate and adjust my behavior accordingly. Anyways, that was Wednesday. And then Thursday. Thursday was 5 things that are worse as a content creator. I don't remember the exact title I gave this one, but like I said already, this is basically me going through content creation, ways that 5 things are worse. There is a cut in the video where I took over a part, because basically my reason number 3 in the original video, and it's why I filmed this video like 3-4 weeks ago, and I hadn't posted it until now because I wasn't happy with reason number 3, and I was like, do I completely refilm it? Do I not? I like the rest of the video, and so eventually I went in and jumped for the rest of it. Hi Rena, I'll be done in about 5 minutes. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be done in around 5 minutes. Cool. Perfect. That's my wife in the background, if that wasn't clear for me saying hi Rena. And anyways, so the reason number 3 for that video previously was how I am too involved or invested in YouTube statistics now. So like I'll watch, oh, this video's doing that, this video's doing that, and it becomes a little bit of its own game that I don't like. I'd rather be completely uninvested. The reason I wasn't happy with that reason is because it didn't fit in with the rest of the video. That's not something that's worse about the hobby. That's something that's worse about content creation. The specific goal of the video was to be about how content creation has made the hobby worse, and that was nothing to do with the hobby. So it felt out of place, and eventually I took it out and replaced it with something that was actually more relevant to the way content creation has made the hobby worse for me. Friday was Friday was games I've backed in February, done together with my wife. She made me back an additional game, but I backed 7, or I guess 8 now, 8 out of 21 games that I covered, and 21 is, as usual, these are games I was interested in, and then what decision I made. It's not out of all the games, because if it was out of all the games, it would be like 8 out of 70, but it was 8 out of 21. The 21 that I had an interest in, and then going over which ones I made decisions around. I'm getting slightly better, but I'm still backing too many games. And then my wife's making it worse to boot. And then on, that was Friday, which brings us to today. Today we have a few things going up. We have a gameplay of Floriferous. We have a Play This Not That of Lord of the Rings, the card game, versus Marvel Champions, the card game. Going over both of them, the pros and cons, and why I prefer one and which one. I'm sure you can guess, but in case you can't, I'll leave it as a surprise for you. And then we have, coming up this week, we have a bunch of things. We have a last year in review, one of those Where Are They Now, covering reviews from a year ago. We're going to have a board game upgrades video, if I can get it filmed in time, and then I might have a video of my Gamma trip. I strung together a bunch of clips. If I can make a cohesive, entertaining video out of it, or partially entertaining video, I will. If not, then it'll just be for my own little memory banks and all that. And then, lastly, the games on the table. Games on the table, we have Creature Comforts, which I haven't taken out of the shrink yet. It just arrived, but I hope to do an unboxing with Ricky and then table this. She was so excited when she saw it showed up. We have Age of Rome, which I will be doing coverage on. Like I said already, I've already played this one, but I want to play it again. I want to go through it a few times. This is from Teetotum Games, I believe, or Teetotum Games. My first experience was solid. We'll talk more about it when I actually review it. Then we have Welcome to the Moon, which I picked up from the Glass Die in Reno. Basically, I paid $10. This is the problem with retail in general. Like, I paid more for this than I could have paid just buying it online. And if I bought it online, I would have gotten it to my doorstep, instead of having to travel back with a plane. But I also spent 6 hours in the bar gaming, and I'm not a big drinker, so I only had one drink, and so I just felt like I owed them what's the Jewish word's a karsatov, but gratitude, that's the word I'm looking for. I felt I owed them a gratitude in the sense that you just gave me a space to play games for 6 hours, and so I'm gonna buy a game from you, even if it is more expensive. Plus, it's a game I want, so that helps. That's Welcome to the Moon. And then we have Almanac the Dragon Road, which I really hope to play this week because I dove into the rules. I read like 6 or 7 rule books this past week on the flight. It's 15 hours of flight time and airport time will give you time to read rule books. So I read a full Jack Reacher book, but I also read 8 or 9 rule books, and this was one of them. So I hope to dive into that this week. And that is everything. That is the whole week in review. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to go have fun with my kids. And until next time, have a good one.